Hey guys, welcome to another installation video by TST Industries. In this video we will be showing you the installation of our Undertail Closeout on a Suzuki GSX-S1000 S/F. And these two models just share most of the components, and they differ in very small ways, mostly up front on the vehicle. So the installation will be exactly the same on these two bikes. If you've watched our GSX-S1000F Fender Eliminator video, you will know by this point that we meant to make this component earlier on this year, and we're finally launching it now. And that is basically to supplement our Fender Eliminator with a way to close out the hole left behind by the fender. It's a very nice cosmetic piece. You could use it by itself, maybe on the track, or for whatever reason you don't use your license plate setup in this place. This will make your undertail really nice and cosmetically closed out and also water resistant. If you use it with this setup, it will basically just improve the looks and functionality and keep the whole undertail of the bike looking very finished. The installation is pretty simple. For the portion where you install the Fender Eliminator, we invite you to watch our other video where those steps are shown. In this video, we will only be showing the steps necessary to install this by itself, and then later on top of already built Fender Eliminator. Let's get started. All right, so the first instance of this installation will be the closeout by itself. Whether you've taken off your signaling system in your Fender for track use, or you've mounted your license plate elsewhere and now you just want to close out this hole here left behind by the fender, this is the part that you will use to finish off this area, make it really nice cosmetically and prevent water and debris from getting into your trunk area. So the first step of this installation will be to decide whether or not we're going to be running any wires inside. This hole is meant for running wires to the inside, and if you're not running a license plate light and signals in this area, like in the instance of just closing it out, what we want to do is just fill in this hole with the provided hardware. There's a countersunk screw that comes with the kit, fits in here nice and flush, and it receives a locking nut from the other side. I'm going to use a 4mm Allen along with a 10mm box wrench to fasten this together. I have a nice ratcheting box wrench. You could use an open-ended, a regular box wrench, or whatever you got that's 10mm. Tighten it up, and that's it. So the next step will be to put in 20mm long M6 screws with the head on the cosmetic surface that goes to the bottom and the threaded portions protruding up towards the subframe. The subframe has threaded bosses that these just thread into. At this point, we need to make stacks of washers here, 3 on each side. All these components are included in the kit, and they're really easy to assemble here. The one part that I find difficult is keeping them in while I only need to screw one in. So I'll grab them like this. I'll support this screw head from the bottom with my hand while I have my 4mm Allen inserted into the other one. So I can thread it up, just 1 or 2 threads, and then work on the other side. And I'll get these nice and close to the closeout, and then I will need to make sure that the closeout is in its proper orientation before I tighten down. So I will leave this some adjustability, and then I will press here right by the screw that finishes off the closeout here in the center. And then I will tighten down on these, get them snug first, and then tighten them all the way. If you want to torque this, I would say use 88 inch-pounds of torque on these connections. If you're the type of guy that likes to be sure that these won't pop out during riding vibration, use blue Loctite or some other thread locking compound that is blue. You don't want to use red, that's a little bit, that's too strong and you'll have trouble taking this out later. So this is pretty much it. That's what it looks like when you use it in just the closeout mode. And now we'll just strip this down and install the Fender Eliminator on the bike, just like you've seen us do on the F model video. And then we'll show you how to put these together and install them on the bike. In this instance of this install, we will be putting on the closeout along with our Fender Eliminator system. This was shown, the configuration of this was already shown in the previous video. So to get to this point, please follow that video. We would just pick up from where this closeout gets installed along with the Fender Eliminator. Now, as you can see, we did not fill in this hole for this instance because we will be feeding all the wires through here. So let's do that now. On this setup, I have a license plate light. So that wire will need to go through, and I have signals. So we have 4 wires responsible for the operation of the signals. I will feed those through to the other side and just get them milked out like this. And obviously you want the surface with all the textures cut in and our logo on the bottom, so that is the visible surface. And now I have slack here in this wire for the license plate light, so I'm going to take up the slack. And before I commit to this installation, I'm going to check that these wires aren't wrapped around each other, because then it'll be difficult to make them really nicely organized back here. And I've done that. So now I will need to get the hardware. All right, so the hardware that came with the Fender Eliminator includes 2 washers and 2 screws. We will not be reusing the screws, but we will reuse the washers. They are smaller than the washers that came with the closeout kit, so be mindful of that. We'll use 1 small washer along with one of the 20mm long M6 screws that came with the closeout. And we will do that on both sides here. And from the bottom side, it will look something like this. Now we will need to build the stacks of washers on the other side and get all these wires in through the appropriate hole in here. And then these guys will need to be threaded up. As you can imagine, 2 separate screws with 6 washers stacked up on those screws. It's going to be a little cumbersome. So my trick is to use painter's tape to hold the bottom side of this assembly together and give me the ability to not lose some of these components. All right, so I've pre-cut some painter's tape for my ease here. I'm just going to apply it over the heads of these screws. I have 2 pieces. If you have a helper, probably skip this step and just have your helper hold the screws from the bottom. I like to do these things myself on film, so this is where we're at. When you flip this over, you'll still need to support the bracket from the bottom, but at least the screws won't move around on you, and whole installation will be vastly easier. So let's go forward with putting in some of these wires. I like to put the longest one in first. And then, since these are pretty short and I'm going to be working in close proximity here, I'm going to go to the washer stacking step before I get those wires in. And just like in the previous instance of this install, we have 3 washers on each one of these screws. And then once these wires are in the trunk and accessible from the trunk, you can move forward with the fastening of these screws. Now you could either poke through the painter's tape into the head and begin fastening these, once you align them with the threaded boss in the subframe. Or you could peel back on the tape. I'm going to choose to peel back on this side of the tape because I put in a fat layer of tape and it's going to be tough to poke through and still have bite on the screw with my 4mm Allen. Now when you do that, you have to make sure that you don't lose the screw out of the bottom, because then you will have to repeat all these steps. So nice slow and steady approach produces the best results. Once these are threaded in and self-supporting, you can peel off the tape and then snug them up just a little bit. Now I want to emphasize the point that the forward edge towards the front of the bike of the closeout will need to be pushed in, and then we need to support it there while you screw these guys in. And as you bottom out the screws, the forward part of the closeout will come up towards you, down towards the bottom of the bike, and it will find its final place. Now I don't want to tighten these down all the way just yet. I want to make sure that I didn't clamp any of these wires under a screw or washer, and also make sure that I get this bracket centered, because otherwise this will look off center and not very nice. So once I have it centered and made sure that my wires are not clamped in anything, I'm going to snug them up. And one more thing I'm going to do is make sure that my wires are pretty loose up top and able to move in and out from the outside to the inside, because that will confirm to me that I didn't clamp anything, and that is the case. Now I'm going to go full strength, and again, if you guys want to torque these screws in, it's 88 inch-pounds. Don't confuse that with foot-pounds. 88 foot-pounds will break these things off. We've seen that happen, so inch-pounds. If you want to use a thread locking fluid like Loctite, I recommend blue. Do not go beyond blue. It'll be a pain to remove this afterwards. All right, so this is basically it. For the rest of the steps from this point forward is basically the wiring of the Fender Eliminator components, which we showed you in the F model instruction video, so you can reference that video for any portion of this install that is not related to our closeout. Besides that, this video is pretty much done, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys subscribe to our channel and leave us some comments. We always like hearing from you guys. Leave them below in the comment field, and that's it. See you next time.